Started. I'll wait 1 second for shuffling in. Good evening and welcome to tonight's 36th Senatorial District Debate, hosted by the Lancaster Chamber of Commerce and Industry and LMP Media Group. Tonight is your chance to hear from the candidates running for the district in the November 4th general election. Grace Brethren Church of Lidditz is our host tonight, and we thank them for having us. I'm Heather Valutis, Advocacy Director with the Lancaster Chamber. Before we begin, I'd ask you all to silence your cell phones and any other electronic devices you may have. I'd also ask that you refrain from cheers, applause, or outbursts until the debate concludes in order to maximize the 90 minutes that we've allotted for this evening. Tonight's debate is being live streamed at lancasteronline.com. We are pleased to have the two candidates on the ballot for the 36th Senatorial District, Republican Representative Ryan Aument and Democrat Gary Schreckengost. Ryan Aument is currently serving as a state representative for the 41st House District, and Gary Schreckengost is a history teacher. Tonight, the candidates will respond to the questions from our moderators, Tom Baldridge, President and CEO of the Lancaster Chamber, and Karen Shuey, Government and Politics Writer for LMP. With that, I will turn it over to Tom.
Thank you, Heather. And although we are discouraging of outbursts and wild hoops and hollers, how about a round of applause for our two candidates that are here this evening?
Thank you.
Thank you both very much for participating in this, and thank all of you here tonight for joining us. The questions posed to the candidates tonight will cover a wide range of business and community issues of interest and concern to the residents of Lancaster County and specifically to this Senate district. For the debate, the candidates will begin with introductory remarks, and then we'll move into moderated questions. Both candidates will be given up to 90 seconds to answer each of the questions. After that, the moderated questions conclude. There are 10 of them. We will then turn it over to the audience for your questions. We've placed 3x5 cards on your seats or nearby, and if anybody has a question, what we would ask you to do is just fill out this card and raise your hand with it, and Heather or others will come around and pick it up from you. We do hope to generate some questions from the audience. We've allotted appropriate time for that, and I would encourage you to take advantage of that opportunity to make sure you're getting the answers to the issues that are important to you. Just a few minutes ago, Gary won the coin toss, so he has elected to have Ryan begin the debate with his opening remarks, and Gary will be the last person to speak tonight with the closing remarks. So with that and no further ado, I turn it over to Representative Ryan Aument for opening remarks.
Thank you and good evening. Thank you to the Chamber and the Lancaster newspapers tonight for hosting this event. They hosted a similar event in the spring during the primary campaign and did a fantastic job with the event they hosted. And thanks to all of you for participating in this process and being here this evening and listening to Gary and I discuss our vision for the future of Pennsylvania. I want to extend my thanks to Major Schreckengost for being here and for waging this campaign. I think it's important that we present a clear vision, a contrast to the voters of Lancaster County. I think any time that we have veterans who have honorably served their country step forward to run for office, I think that's a noble thing, and I'm pleased that Gary has chosen to run for this office and to wage this campaign with me. Throughout the evening tonight, you're going to hear numerous issues, and I suspect you'll hear significant differences between Gary and I. But we're both running because we seek to represent the residents all across the 36th Senatorial District in the State Senate, which is a significant job, which is an important job. As I've been on the campaign trail for the last year now, I've had the opportunity at town hall events, going door to door, making phone calls at numerous events. I've had the opportunity to listen to the voters all across this district. And there's numerous issues that voters are concerned about, whether that be property tax reform, whether that be pension reform, liquor privatization, controlling the growth of government, reducing the tax burden on Pennsylvania families. Throughout all of those conversations, I've heard a desire for leadership that can get results in Harrisburg. And so I'm here tonight to talk about my vision for Pennsylvania, and I look forward to the opportunity, should the voters put their trust in me, to representing the residents of the 36th Senatorial District, working together to get results on issues that matter most to our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Aument. Mr. Schreckengost.
Yes, sir. And thank you, Ryan, for thanking the Chamber and Lancaster newspaper and myself. And thanks for coming out and sharing tonight with us. There is a difference between Mr. Aument and I, and it really comes down to leadership style. It comes down to substance. Mr. Aument talks about strong leadership. He has his plan. When you bring about a plan without really engaging the voters, I think you need to show a little more flexibility. In other words, as soon as we vote for Ryan Aument, he's not going to need us anymore. Once we put him in office, he's going to execute the plan, and he'll carry on, and he won't need your opinion or my opinion, but that of the state party. And I'll just give you an example. I got my booklet, the Ryan Aument booklet, thank you. And it says, a proven leader to put us first, paid for by the Republican Party of Pennsylvania. Who's the us? For me, the us is us. It's the people of the 36. I will not be beholden by any political party. Am I running as a Democrat? Yes, proudly so. But I have a very strong independent streak. If you're looking for someone who's moderate, someone who's willing to compromise, someone who's willing to look through and find those politically viable things with 25 other senators, I'm probably more qualified for this job. And that's really what we're looking at. Who's more qualified? Ryan Aument or myself? Who would you rather have teaching your kids, watching your back, listening to your problems, and protecting your flank? That's really what this race is about. We will differ on some issues, but I will assure you, I will answer every email personally. I will talk. I will engage.
Thank you.
Every day.
Thank you.
All right, brother.
Now for the first question, and we'll begin with Representative Aument with an answer. The winner of this race will join a Senate in a state that has no surplus of money, is challenged by its revenue growth, and has slower job growth than the national average. To balance the budget, which is constitutionally required in Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania will need to either generate more revenue or reduce spending, or a combination of both. Explain specifically where you believe there's a potential for revenue enhancements and which programs you believe could deserve to be cut.
I think it's important to note where we've been. 4 years ago, the unemployment rate at the end of the Rendell administration was 8.1%. Today, the unemployment rate is at 5.7. 4 years ago, the Republican legislature inherited a $4 billion budget deficit, which we had to close. We made very difficult choices, including cutting back in waste, fraud, and abuse within the Department of Public Welfare. But no doubt, we face challenges in the coming years. There's been a loss of federal FMAP funds. We have the costs incurred by the implementation of the Not-So-Affordable Care Act. And we have a looming pension crisis that is dramatically impacting our ability to adequately fund our schools and other programs that the state is mandated to fund. So I think step number one, when we are sworn in January, should I be elected, is pension reform. That is, I think, the most significant economic crisis facing our state today. The solutions are not going to be easy. I think we have a plan on the table. The Tobash plan that we attempted to vote in the House that would result in a hybrid pension plan, a defined benefit up to $50,000, and a defined contribution plan beyond that. So I think there are additional sources of looking on the expenditure side of the equation before going to the taxpayers and asking for more, and more, which is Harrisburg's solution. I think we can do more on the expenditure side of the equation than we should.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Ryan's party has had 4 years. 4 long years. House, Senate, and the governor. We're still talking about the same issues. To answer the question, talking to the people of the 36, we not only have to enhance, but we have to cut and manage. And the enhancement comes with that 3 to 5% severance tax to lower our property taxes. According to the people of 36, the number one issue is property taxes, property taxes, property taxes. And because our Senate cannot walk and chew gum at the same time, unless you tell me any differently, that's going to be my job. I will be a broken record in the Senate as the independent voice of the people of Northern Lancaster County, property taxes, property taxes, property taxes. I know they're going to try to move it on to something else, like National or State Chipmunk Day, so we can debate about that. Shrek will stand up. Property taxes, property taxes, property taxes. I'm that guy.
Thank you.
The next question was about Marcellus shale, directed towards you, Mr. Schreckengost, but
All right.
you have kind of answered that. But if we can just get you again on where you stand with imposing a 5% extraction tax on natural gas drilling on the state's Marcellus shale region.
Yes, we're for retaining the 2% impact fee because we don't want to take it away from the local people. All right. And if this pipeline comes through, which we'll talk about that I know later, yeah, we're going to take that 2% plus. But yeah, I am for a 3 to 5. Ryan and I can't sit up here and promise exactly what's going to happen because we're going to have to work with 25 other senators. And I don't use terms like working across the aisle. The aisle is a pathway to move. I work with 25 other senators. I don't care what the party is. I care about, do we have shared interests? And I might agree with you on this issue, might not agree with you on the next one, but hey, brother, I want to work with you on this one. And I'm a Lancaster County person, not a D or an R. There's just too much partisanship in this state, and it's one of the reasons why we're in trouble. It is. We need to stop. We really need to stop. I don't know of any other organization that has a permanent division of parties on committees. If we had that in the military, we'd all be speaking German. It's stupid. We don't do it in our workplaces. Why do we let the legislature get away with it year after year? And I don't blame you for that, Ryan, but I blame the system for it.
All right, Representative Aument, would you support a 5% extraction tax on Marcellus shale?
Well, we just heard that we would utilize a 3 to 5% in addition, is the proposal, in addition to the 2% impact fee to reduce property taxes. And I know we'll get into property taxes later, but I think it's important to point out, to replace school property taxes at the statewide level and the local school district level, you are talking about a replacement of over $20 billion. A 5% Marcellus shale extraction tax gets you about $500 million. I don't think you're going to see much in terms of property tax relief if that's our plan.
1% sales tax, 1% income.
So I think ultimately, now let me
question.
answer the question directly with regard to an extraction tax. I have been very clear that I would support an impact fee and I could be supportive of an extraction tax. Now keep in mind, the way the impact fee legislation was written, that in the event we put in place an extraction tax, there's a severability clause that would make the impact fee go away. Lancaster County today is receiving about $500,000. That's real revenue that Lancaster County is receiving. So if we do move forward with an extraction tax, we need to ensure that revenue is still coming to Lancaster County, those areas that are perhaps not directly the result of Marcellus shale activity. But it must be done in a way that the industry is competitive with what's happening with the states around us, and you have to look at the full tax picture, the taxing environment, the regulatory environment, the cost of compliance.
Concur.
We have to look at the entire picture, but I could certainly be supportive of something as long as it's being economically competitive and it's providing for environmental and infrastructure impact first and not just to expand general fund spending.
And Ryan, you changed your answer from the primary. I was sitting right there.
Excuse me, just use your time at the appropriate time
Sorry,
when you
sir.
allotted it.
I'm sorry. Sorry, Ryan.
Next question is for Representative Aument. It's been said that there are at least 100 manufacturing jobs waiting to be filled in this county, many of which get pointed at as the deficit being in job training and skills providing, able to provide skills for those unemployed workers. What role do you think the state government should play in helping the underemployed and the unemployed get jobs, and what role specifically would you as a state senator want to play in trying to close that gap?
Mm-hmm. It's an issue that's been of great concern to me, is the seeming out of alignment between the economy and our education system today. And so I think as we are looking at providing opportunities for young people, upward economic opportunity, the free market and a quality education system are central. And so I think supporting our technical schools, encouraging young people for whom that's a good fit to take advantage of our technical training, our technical schools, ensuring that our school system has rigorous academic standards to ensure our young people who are graduating are college and are career ready. And then I also think that it's important that we have a higher education system that is better aligned. There's greater transparency around academic programs, graduation rates, the cost to earn a degree, and the employment rate in those academic majors. I think families need to have access to that information so they can make better informed decisions. A quick example of that is I look at Thaddeus Stevens College of Technology, which is an absolute gem to Lancaster County. And you're right, those jobs are there, they are available, but we have young people who are not being trained in time to meet the demand in those particular, in that particular market. At Thaddeus Stevens, we see a 90% graduation rate and 90% job placement rate, good family-sustaining jobs. And it's certainly not the answer for all students, but it is for many. And many of our young people are going to a traditional four-year college where it may not be the best fit and going into and accumulating massive amounts of debt.
Thank you. Mr. Schreckengost.
The question again was better matching job seekers with the actual jobs.
Correct, and the role that the state government has in helping the underemployed and the unemployed get unemployment, as well as your specific priority as a state senator in that same regard.
Well, we can't wait for the state legislature to do anything. Day one of the things that I would like to use my office for is to better stitch the seams here in Lancaster County, because we do have all these outstanding career centers, Thaddeus Stevens, et cetera, but we do need to do a better job in matching actual jobs with job seekers. And part of the problem is there are a lot of families out there who do not want to send their children to places like Thaddeus Stevens. That's just the bottom line. So we have to use, and this won't cost us anything because I'm already on the payroll, I have to do a better job. The state senator has to do a better job here, stitching together the local businesses, forecasting what their needs are, and turning to Thaddeus Stevens, CTCs, et cetera, to start. And then after that, well, it's like what Ryan said, but the problem is we don't have a lot of money to throw around. I think we just need to start to drive more people into those gold-collar jobs, and hopefully we can start bringing manufacturing in, which is more of a national issue, okay? Because the young ones, we want to set up small niche companies that employ 20 to 50 people. But it's hard. And we'll talk about removing this or that regulation. Businesses want simple regulations. They don't want handouts. My understanding, everyone they've talked to, is they want simple regulations. You can keep your hand out.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The next question deals with tax policy. Mr. Schreckengost, can you describe how we should tax wealth? How should we tax income in the middle class, and how should we tax those living in poverty?
Well, as you know, in this state, constitutionally, we can only have a flat tax. I know Wolf wants to try something else that's going to skirt the Constitution. I would be against that, unless we change the Constitution. I support a flat tax, okay? But like I said, to help drive down the costs of property taxes, we have to shift. And we have to move from a current 3.07 to 4.07. Ryan wrote in here that a guy like me is for doubling your income tax rate. That doesn't double it, unless I got my math wrong. 1%. So no, in this state, we're not going to get a graduated or progressive income tax. We're just not.
Okay. Representative Aument, same question.
I fully support keeping tax rates low. I fully support the flat tax that we have in place regarding the income tax, currently at 3.07. I do not support a progressive tax. I would oppose that. Again, I continue to believe the problem in Pennsylvania is not that we tax too little, it's we spend too much. And so I don't believe the answer is to continue to go back to the taxpayers. But I do believe that we do have a role at the state to put policies in place that are going to generate economic output, that are going to grow the economy, that are going to create jobs, and in the long term will provide additional revenue to the Commonwealth. And specifically lower the corporate net income tax. We should finally phase out the capital stock and franchise tax to give businesses an opportunity to grow and expand, to hire new workers at family sustaining wages so they're paying and providing revenue into the Commonwealth. I think that's the answer, not raising the income tax or going to a progressive tax structure.
The taxes aren't low. Our property taxes are very high.
Thank you.
Okay. Earlier tonight, we heard it said property taxes, property taxes, property taxes. We're about to speak about property taxes. There's been and will continue to be support for sweeping property tax reform. One bill that would eliminate the school property tax altogether and replace it with an increased and expanded sales tax and an increased personal income tax. Would you support this bill? Why or why not?
So I think the first issue that I think we have to point out is unless we control spending, unless we look at the expenditure side of the equation, all we really are doing is shifting an ever-increasing tax burden on Pennsylvania's families. So we need to look at the expenditure side of the equation first. I have been supportive of and I have voted for House Bill, Senate Bill 76. It was House Bill 76 was filed as an amendment to eliminate your school property taxes by shifting to an income from 3.07 to 4.35% and a sales tax from 6.6% to 7% and closing all exemptions. The House passed House Bill 1189, which gives local school districts, I actually think this is a very viable approach in the Senate. House Bill 1189 allows local school districts to use additional opportunities for revenue, provided they do a dollar-for-dollar reduction in the property taxes and cap those property taxes. The reason this issue is so difficult is because we have a basic end funding formula that is outdated, is not fair, and does not adequately fund growing school districts like we have here in Lancaster County. You have some schools across the Commonwealth who are receiving more than 50% of their funding from the state, and many who are receiving less than 20%, in the teens that they're receiving from the state. So the local property taxpayers in those areas, like here in Lancaster County, have to pick up that entire difference. And so the reason that a property tax elimination bill is not viable today in the General Assembly is because of that formula, and you have legislators who will not vote for a change because they're benefiting under the current system. We have to fix that first, property taxes second, and it has to be a priority.
Thank you. Mr. Schreckengost.
And it is frustrating. Most of those legislators that Ryan talks about are from the northern or the western tier. Most of them are GOP. The bottom line is you were referencing Senate Bill 76. We love the goal. We love the end state. It's politically dead. They keep throwing it out to the public, hoping that you'll just keep rolling with it for the next 10 years. But we can look at what we can agree on. And when I read Senate Bill 76, I think they called it that because it was like 76 pages long. And I saw the little handouts and the give-me's to certain people that most people don't take the time to read. So I am supportive, and so are the people of 36, unless you tell me otherwise. We need to tax shift. Not to expand the balloon more, but we need to shift from property taxes to higher sales and income. But the trick is, how do you get those northern and western tier legislators to play ball? And if Ryan and I can give you the answer to that, we would probably be living in Monaco right now. That's difficult, okay? And we're not going to sit here and tell you, if you elect us in there, that we're going to, like, flip things. But all I can say is if we elect Ryan, who's expected to win, he's GOP, same, mathematically figured, we're going to get the same. The only way we're going to do something is we put somebody in there that they're not expecting. And that's me.
Thank you.
I won't fail you.
We're going to move on to another popular issue here, the pipeline project. Mr. Schreckengost, elected officials have largely shied away from taking a position on the proposed 35-mile natural gas pipeline that would run through Lancaster County. Where do you stand on that issue?
Well, again, I stand with my neighbors. If we're not willing to stand and stop the seizure of our neighbor's land from a for-profit corporation, we are bowing down to the king and the West India Company, because that's all this is. It's a land grab. I don't care what you say. Otherwise, that's what it is. And the people I've talked to, and I am going to go on a tour with the citizens group this Saturday, and we got a seat for you, Ryan, and they've told me they do not want their land seized. I will use our office as state senator to do everything we can to stop, staunch, do something. Now, those few people, and there are some who want to sell their land to Williams, then I would use my office to help them, talk to FERC, say, hey, these people are for selling their land, but we got to make sure they get the most money for their value, because I also know some people up in the northern tier who got ripped off by these gas companies.
Thank you. Representative Aument?
Well, I think we have a choice. I think we can politicize this issue, or I think we can properly inform the electorate and those that we seek to represent. Pennsylvania has a real opportunity here in terms of the energy, be an energy supplier. We have the opportunity to create jobs and opportunity for future generations of Pennsylvania. And we have to get that product to market. Now, having said that, how that's done is incredibly important. We have 7 pipelines already that currently run through Lancaster County. This is not something new. However, how this is done is vitally important to ensure that we're avoiding historically sensitive areas, environmentally sensitive areas, and high-density residential communities and other factors. Ultimately, it's going to be a federal regulator, FERC, Commission of 5, that is going to make that decision. We are prevented by law to politically influence that process. And there's a reason for that. So my role has been to consistently inform the residents who live in my community who have concerns, to inform them who to contact, who to express their concerns, and to relay concerns I'm hearing to Williams Company that's responsible for siting the pipeline. And I believe that by holding the position that I do, maintaining the position that I have, that I can have greater impact on those conversations than if I was attempting to politicize this situation.
Thank you.
By standing by your neighbors, if that's politicizing, then I'm all in.
I would only point out, in addition
all
to
in.
that,
Sorry, brother.
because I do think it's important.
We disagree.
I think it's important to point out that there are residents all across Lancaster County who have differing views on this issue.
Correct.
Folks that I have heard from, I will tell you, folks who've contacted my office, who have called me, who've emailed, who've written, it is 50-50 at best.
Are they
in
landowners?
terms of where the public is at on this issue. So which residents are you going to represent? I'm going to represent
the
all of my
landowners.
constituents.
Moving on. We've already heard quite a few mentions this evening of the word pensions, and the next question deals specifically with that issue. As I think everybody in this room knows, the state is facing a massive pension spike of up to $50 billion over the next 30 years. Attempts at reform have been made in the past several years, but it's not enough to address the overall liability. In a similar vein, municipalities are also being faced with pension crises that, if not addressed, could lead to tax increases or bankruptcies at the local level. If elected, what policies would you support to ensure the solvency of the states and local governments' pension systems?
As I mentioned at the outset, I think this issue is a vital concern to Pennsylvania. I think it needs to be at the top of our agenda when we come back next January, should I be elected. $50 billion unfunded liability, which I believe, frankly, is understated. We are now crossing employer contributions. Now keep in mind, when politicians talk to you about employer contributions, we're talking about taxpayer contributions. You're the one who's paying the bill. We are crossing $2 billion of an $11 billion budget on education, for example, to provide for our employer contributions. For anyone who's involved in private sector industry, when you start talking in terms of not 20%, but 30% of payroll is going to meet pension obligations, the system is not sustainable. And our children and grandchildren will pay for it. Allowing Act 120 to simply work itself out and hope the market recovers is not a viable solution. The answers are not easy, but I do think a first step is transitioning future employees, new employees, into a hybrid, defined benefit, defined contribution plan. We have a plan on the table that generates real savings, $11 to $15 billion, that we can put back into the system to lower payments and to actually deal with the unfunded liability. It's not the answer, but it's a critical first step, and then we need to bring our public sector employees and have them be part of this conversation as well to address this issue. It's vitally important as we look to recruit young talent into the public sectors and into education.
Thank you. Mr. Schreckengost.
Okay. The first step we need to take is to remove all pensions from elected officials. That's the first step. You lead by example. The legislators were the ones who put us here. I remember before I deployed overseas, I paid into it. The pension system was at 120%. When I returned from my deployments, all of a sudden there was a crisis. And, well, who caused the crisis? It wasn't me. It wasn't you. It were our elected officials. It's the same people we keep putting in year after year. This is a difficult issue, Ryan. And I think if we up the share of what the state is supposed to give to the local school districts, you go to the teachers, and I know there are teachers in this room who try to reach out to their elected representatives and say, hey, we are willing to work with you. We don't want to bankrupt our neighbors. We don't. But they always bring up the union, the union. Those are like 6 people. They all sit in a room in Harrisburg together and they yell at each other. You got to go directly to the people. And I want retirement security for everybody in here. Everybody. Our allies have it. We've been defending them for 50 years. What do we have?
Thank you.
Okay. Do the math.
Our next question is about farmland preservation. Lancaster County is a leader, both nationally and in Pennsylvania, in farmland preservation, yet state funding seems to cheat the county, mostly because it weights more heavily against development than toward agricultural production. This year, Lancaster County will get about $1 for every dollar it spends on farmland preservation, compared with $17 spent by Montgomery County and getting $9, and York County getting $9. How would you work to steer more state dollars in the direction of productive agriculture here in Lancaster?
Well, Karen, can I ask a question? With a question?
Sure.
How much has Montgomery County gotten before? I don't, Brian, do you know? I mean, is it because Lancaster County got a ton and then now it's Montgomery's county turn, or is this like some kind of political game that we're playing with the cookies?
Well, part of it is because there's a county match to what the state is investing.
Okay, so
depending what's happening at the county level does impact that sum. I don't know that's the exact answer for Montgomery County, but that could be a
So
factor.
Karen, are we cheating ourselves? Are we? I mean, I've never heard the term we're being cheated before, and I learned something tonight. If we are being cheated, if those people from Montgomery County are stealing from us, well, then Shrek's going to walk over to the Montgomery County Center and say, hey, what's going on? But are Ryan and I for farmland preservation? Yes. Is that the question?
Sure.
Yeah, it's like saying, what's your opinion about volunteer firefighters? I mean, you know, I love them.
But it's more heavily weighted towards development.
I'm
And
against that.
How committed are
No,
you to the development of Lancaster County versus its agricultural preservation?
Well, again, you got to go to the voters. You got to educate them. You got to give them the facts without the spin. And that's the most important thing. We need the facts without the spin. Okay? I'm not going to go in there and try to lean certain things or leave out this or that to get the answer that I expect or want, but you got to go to the voters. But my sense of it is, this is the best agricultural land in the world. It is. I've been to other places in this world, and man, people would trade their eldest to farm here, especially in Iraq.
If I could address directly, I think the answer lies in, and I didn't mean to, in the way I answered Mr. Schreckengost in any way to blame our municipal officials or county officials. I think they do a great job managing this program, but it is a county match. The issue at the statewide level, in my view, is that we do not appropriately weight that funding formula for production agriculture. That, I think, is the answer. And I think I haven't talked extensively with our county commissioners about that, but I think that's part of the issue that they have in terms of the money that's coming back to Lancaster County. Is it appropriately weighted for production agriculture that we have in Lancaster? Last session, not this session, but last session, Senator Brubaker had a bill, I think it was Bill 1437, that actually made adjustments. That bill did not advance. Ultimately, I have talked to Senator Brubaker, and it would be my intent to offer that legislation should I be elected to make an adjustment to that formula.
Thank you.
Did we answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
This next question is about, more broadly speaking, the economy in Pennsylvania and to your level of interest, specifically Lancaster County. But what would you say to business leaders here today about the future of Pennsylvania's economy, and what unique skills and priorities would you bring to the state Senate to provide confidence that we're headed in the right direction?
I have tremendous confidence that we're heading in the right direction. I think we are, particularly in Lancaster County, but across the state, our economy is very, very diverse. I think we have a thriving energy industry in the state, a thriving agricultural industry in the state, and I think passing a transportation bill as we did this last session, improving the infrastructure across the Commonwealth was vitally important to industry, to business in Pennsylvania, but there is much more to be done. I am pleased that an unemployment rate since Ed Rendell left office has dropped from 8.1 to 5.7. I'm pleased that we have new private sector jobs that are being created, but there is much more that has to be done. And I think improving the tax and regulatory environment in the state to, as I've said, lower the corporate net income tax, to finally phase out the capital stock and franchise tax, to improve the regulatory environment. And this pension issue, in terms of businesses who are choosing to locate here, looking at the liabilities of the Commonwealth, do not underestimate this pension issue to businesses making those decisions. And I have not heard a plan on the other side. I've heard what led to the problems, but I have not heard a plan. I support getting the public sector, getting elected officials, legislators out of and leading by example and being part of any pension reform. I voted for it, I've supported it, but that's not a solution. The only solution I've heard is more and more taxes. We need real reform to transition new employees into a defined contribution type system and deal with the unfunded liability. And I think it's vitally important to Pennsylvania industry.
Thank you. Mr. Schreckengost.
Well, first I'd ask you. I'd ask your group. I'd sit down. I'd ask, what are the targets you're looking for? What kind of assets would you get from the state, and how would you use them? Then I want to ask you. It's about us, ultimately, and I have Sergeant Cannon here, and listen, I don't have a degree in economics, but I can tell you this. I will keep looking for a solution, and I don't care where it comes from, to get the job done. Manufacturing, Brian and I are not going to disagree on this. I mean, we're from a generation, we want the best for our state. We want the best for our children. We love our state, okay? And we know it has structural problems, but we're not leaving. His family and my family have deep roots, but I'm willing to look at, you come to me and say, Shrek, we need to get rid of this law. This law was made in 1972. It doesn't make any sense. So let's get rid of it, modulate it. I've heard some of our elected leaders say, I'm not going to pass any law while I'm in. That's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. Then why are you there? Why are we paying you? So I'm not going to give you this vague, we need to get rid of regulation, because we've been saying this since 1980. Okay? So I'm not going to sit here and make a promise, but I will tell you this. If you are, and you are, on board with creating family-sustaining jobs in Lancaster County, I will do whatever it takes to help achieve that end state. Sergeant Can, will we get it done? Whatever it takes.
Thank you.
As an educator, I'm sure you're aware of this next topic we're going to talk about. It's unfunded mandates. Many local school districts around here talk about how they're faced with mandates that are often unfunded. I wanted to know if you supported legislation authorizing school districts to suspend or waive implementation of laws and regulations. One example would be Common Core, the Common Core standards that school districts are faced now. Or would you allow them more flexibility to choose what they fund and what they don't, or what they implement, sorry?
Well, since at least 2002, and I'm a teacher, I can't think of anything good that's come down from the federal or the state level. And, you know, I got to tell you, I think there's more behind it than just trying to improve education. I am against every single federal and pretty much state mandate, and the PA core is Common Core, defund it, defund PVAS, defund all those little data measurement tools that we've turned our students into. If the parents actually saw how much money we're spending on, you know, the predictor, the mathematical predictor for Johnny, it's ridiculous. Okay? It needs to stop. It needed to stop 10 years ago. So yeah, I'm absolutely, now, am I asking the local school district to break the law? But the legislature, me, needs to stand for the people and say enough. And if the executive branch has too much overreach, because I think the legislative branch sometimes gives them, you know, ways to walk in the size of Lake Erie, then we need to shrink that. So yes, to answer the question, Common Core, get rid of it. PVAS, get rid of it. Get rid of all that stuff, because I don't know what we're doing wrong in northern Lancaster County. I mean, we'll work with you, but what are the parents, the students, the teachers, the administrators, the school board members? I want to know what we did wrong. Our hands are being tied.
Thank you. Representative Aument, same question?
Yes, I think there's a number of unfunded mandates that should be repealed. I think we need...
Political parties launder the money. They do it better than drug dealers.
Thank you. Representative Aument, would you like to respond
Well,
to...
I'm not sure what to respond to the latter part of that.
Saw it in
But
Iraq all the time.
let me just talk about, if I can, the unfunded mandate issue, because I think this is critical.
Okay.
I think we have to have a conversation about those mandates that we have in place that in many cases are supported by public sector unions and others that have no impact whatsoever on academic achievement in schools. Prevailing wage, pension, the seniority rules, our tenure rules, some of those things.